Now, as I mentioned there, Nicky Sturgeon's Scottish Government has passed stage 1 of a gender recognition bill, which aims to speed up the time it takes to obtain a gender recognition certificate and also lowers the age of obtaining one from 18 to 16. The bill caused the resignation of the SNP's Community Safety Minister, Ash Regan, amid concerns regarding the safety of women. Well, with me now to discuss this is an esteemed panel. Christopher McEleny, the General Secretary of the Alba Party, Murdo Fraser, Conservative MSP for Mid-Scotland and Fife, and Austin Sheridan, a former SNP Glasgow City Councillor, Michelle Ballantyne, former leader of Reform UK Scotland, an esteemed panel. Austin, I want to start with you, if you don't mind. I always like it. I like the fact that you come on shows like this. I really, really do, because we don't get many SNP members who will actually give us the time of day, unfortunately. But I want to start by asking you, what do you think of your fellow panelists, some of whom disagree vehemently with this bill and actually argue that it's going to lead to Scotland's women and maybe even children to be unsafe? What's your message to them?
Thank you very much for having me on. The First Minister did say we should reach beyond the ranks of our own, so that's me contributing to what the First Minister asked me to do. But in terms of the issue that you're discussing, is that I believe that we should be respectful in debate. I believe that people have got genuine concerns, then they should be allowed to air them, and we should be able to discuss them in a calm manner. Unfortunately, when this has been discussed, it has become very heated. I've seen lots of hate being batted back and forward from all sides of the argument on this. But fundamentally, what I think we need to do is look at the facts of the matter. And the fact is that you don't need permission to be trans. People can be trans. People can change their names on documents such as their passport, their bank statements, and live as the gender that they choose to live. That is not something that this legislation impacts upon. What this is simply allowing them to do would be to change their sex on their birth certificate, joining countries like Ireland, Norway and Denmark.
So Christopher McEleny then, General Secretary of the Alba Party, you want an independent Scotland, so I'm assuming that you would like an independent Scotland to be as progressive as countries like Ireland, surely?
Well, I think it's two separate. Oh, good afternoon. I think it's two separate issues. Independence, of course, being about the right to determine your own future and make your own choices. People, obviously, such as Murdo, will have a different view on whether that's best for Scotland. But on the specific issue at GRA, I agree with Austin. The debate has been poor. Many people, I think most people in Scotland, I would include myself, and this group believe that people should be allowed to love who they want to love, be who they want to be, dress how they want to dress, call themselves what they want to call themselves, refer to themselves as a trans man, a trans woman, and most people don't care, particularly what people want to do in their own private lives. But when it comes to the specifics of, in which a very important issue, the protection of female-only spaces, those single-sex spaces, I think that's something that, many women have had their opinions invalidated on. I think it's really legitimate that, females should be allowed to have female-only places, whether that's, things that are perhaps difficult to talk about during daytime TV, such as rape refuge centres, women that have been, victims of, violence by males. These are certainly triggering issues if a woman ended up in one of these places and someone who identifies as a woman but is quite evidently a male-bodied person, that's a traumatising experience, and I think the bill doesn't have adequate safeguards in it. There was a rebellion, as you mentioned, some 7 SNP MSPs. I suppose technically there was a rebellion in Murdo's party because I think his party was certainly opposed to the bill, but one of his members voted in favour of it, showing that this isn't an issue that falls down traditional party lines. But the important fact is this is only stage. It's just one final point is this was only stage. It's only stage 1, and I think in stage 2 and stage 3 you'll see 4, 5, 6, 7, even up to a further 10 SNP rebels if the government don't listen to what are the valid concerns of women.
Yeah, so Murdo Fraser then, we're already seeing, are we not, a difference between a difference between the rest of the UK and Scotland. I mean, you've even had, as far as Nicola Sturgeon's Euro dreams are concerned, the European Union say, well, you would have to adopt the euro, which of course isn't in the SNP plan for independence. So I'm wondering, this is going to create a difference between England and Scotland, thanks to devolution, that's going to potentially put women at risk. It's mad.
Yes, Darren, and I mean, I don't disagree with really pretty much anything that Chris has just said. I think he and I probably would come from a very similar place on these issues. And what's been interesting about this whole debate is that while I think everybody would agree precisely with what Chris said about having a liberal society where people are free to live their lives in the way that they want, the concern, and it comes in particular from women's groups, from well-known feminist campaigners like the writer J.K. Rowling, is that this bill as drafted does threaten women. And it threatens women because the SNP cannot answer a basic question, which is, what is the impact on the Equality Act 2010 if a gender recognition certificate can be issued to anyone who does not need a medical diagnosis anymore, who can simply get one by signing a piece of paper, self-declaring, and after 3 months will be able to legally change their sex. And does that then mean a man, a biological man, without any evidence of gender dysphoria or any surgery, will then be able to enter spaces currently reserved only to women in terms of the Equality Act? And that is where the concern lies. Now, interesting here, the Equality Act is a UK piece of legislation. And according, I think, to yesterday's Daily Telegraph, the Prime Minister is looking at potentially strengthening the Equality Act to enhance the protection of women and girls. Now, that would lead to a very interesting conflict between what the Scottish Government are trying to do and what the UK Government are legislating for across the UK. And we'll need to see how that plays out. But the only other point I'd make in closing is Scottish public opinion is not supportive of these changes. And we've seen a number of opinion polls which say that by a substantial majority, people in Scotland are not convinced that a move to self-ID without any safeguards for anybody over the age of 16 is the right way to go.
Michelle, before I bring you in, that's Michelle Ballantyne there, waiting patiently. Austin, Nicola Sturgeon there, you had J.K. Rowling, as Murdo says, wearing a T-shirt that said, Nicola Sturgeon, destroyer of women's rights. Is she a bigot?
Well, I mean, J.K. Rowling can wear what she wants to wear. It's certainly not the kind of language that I think is appropriate, and I think it's extremely unfair as well. I would say that if you look at women and we look at rights that are being taken away from women, if you look at a global sense, we've got abortion rights being reversed in America. We can see what's going on in Iran at the moment.
Okay,
and it's men that are doing these things. Nicola Sturgeon's government hasn't done anything to deplete women's rights. Nicola Sturgeon's also made clear that the GRA legislation will be in line with the Equality Act of 2010.
All right.
Very, very clear about that.
Okay, let's put that to Michelle Ballantyne then. Let's put that to Michelle. Do you actually think J.K. Rowling's a bigot? That is what she gets called online for defending the right to protest against this particular legislation.
No, not at all. I mean, the problem we've got is the minority agendas have become very strong, particularly in the Parliament. And if you disagree or you object or you make comment against, the way that people are often attacked is by calling them, transphobic, by calling them, homophobic. These sort of actions, by calling you a bigot, and this is designed to frighten people to hold their opinions to themselves and not counter some of the actions that have been taken. And it is very interesting when you look back at the whole how the Parliament operates. Devolution was enacted to bring decision-making closer to the people. And yet here we have a decision that is progressing through Parliament that is not in the interests and the majority of the people. So it's actually pulling it away from the people. And even in if you look at the bill's progress itself, they had 10,800 individuals responded to one of the consultations, and yes, they weeded out a few that were replicas, but at the end of it, they had 59% of the individuals who responded saying they didn't support the principles of the bill, and only 38% supported. And the evidence they were given, and this happens in a lot of the committees in Holyrood, they cherry pick and highlight the evidence that supports the government's direction of travel, and they minimise and suppress the evidence that is not considered supportive of the direction of travel. So you end up with bills going through, and they always say, oh, we'll amend it at stage 2 or amend it at stage 3, it could be voted down, it could be got rid of. Virtually no. I'm not sure whether it's none or whether it's just 1 or 2 bills have ever been stopped once they pass stage 1. And that's where the Holyrood system is going completely wrong.
Christopher McEleny, I want to put that question to you, because I think with a lot of this stuff, a lot of my viewers are saying, well, how can this actually happen in Scotland? Why is this happening? Because there doesn't seem to be, in the same way that there is in Westminster, a large amount of scrutiny, a large amount of journalistic, looking at the legislation, scrutinising what the legislation actually means in practice if this becomes law. And I'm wondering, do you think there is a problem in Scotland with actually the general sort of scrutiny and holding to account of the Holyrood government?
Well, I think certainly there can be a strengthening to the Holyrood committee system. I think that it's very often a party whip system. Westminster, which I think I could sit all day and list the problems it's got, but one of its strengths is its select committee system. People manage to find themselves into the chair of those committees through merit, and they don't rely on whips to appoint those positions, whereas in Scotland, not just the government, of course, the whips effectively determine who's on the committees, and they determine who chairs the committees, and all too often we see the committees basically just serving the political need of the government, and indeed the opposition's party serving the needs of their political opposition. So I think that's a fairly pertinent point. But on the Gender Recognition Act, it did go through a parliamentary committee. As Murdo knows, is at stage 1. There was probably more public awareness brought to the issue because of the contributions made by people like Murdo, who I don't agree with on many constitutional matters, but this is an issue that I think it does highlight this problem we've got in modern society, that we disagree on A and we disagree on B, we can never agree on C. But I think this is an issue that clearly people have been able to work across party lines. They've found themselves, aligned to people that they probably wouldn't find themselves aligned to on other issues, because I think it is bigger than party politics, which is why it would be a real shame if the SNP decided to censure its MSPs for voting for. This is quite clearly, if women are saying, I can't on good conscience vote. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Christopher, but we're going to have to leave it there, sadly. We'll bring you all back to follow this as this debate unfolds. But I tell you what, I don't think it's very good listening for Nicola Sturgeon. I think she's got a real problem on her hands here. But Christopher McEleny, the General Secretary of the Alba Party, Murdo Fraser, the Conservative MSP for Mid-Scotland and Fife, Austin Sheridan, a former SNP Glasgow City Councillor, and Michelle Ballantyne, former leader of Reform UK Scotland. I thank you all for your time and contribution. Now, folks, there's plenty more to come this afternoon on Real Britain after the break.